Hey guys, I'm back, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about 3 continuity changes that Benton Alien Force made to the original series that I personally dislike. I know that some people consider these changes to be blatant retcons, which in layman's terms means information that completely overrides previously established information given to us in the series, whereas some consider these things to just be inconsistencies / information that doesn't quite work with the original series, but doesn't technically completely override what we once knew, and thus could still work with the original continuity if looked at from a certain point of view. I'm just going to split the difference here and call these things changes. Some of them are blatant retcons, and some of them are blatant inconsistencies that can't really be explained away, so just be aware of that as we go on throughout the video. With that out of the way, let's jump into the changes themselves that I dislike.
That function is not available. Omnitrix must return to Primus.
First though, before I dive into my issues with Primus, let me tell you why I love the Omnitrix from the classic series so much. The classic series Omnitrix is the perfect mystery box in my opinion. Sure, on a superficial level, you knew that it transformed Ben into 10 different aliens, but you had no idea just how many aliens were really inside of it or how it really worked, and that's what made it so interesting, and it worked in 2 ways. First was the great meta-narrative that you, a mere human viewer, could never hope to understand the Omnitrix. It was made by the smartest being in this universe, so how could you ever hope to understand it? That meta-narrative works in-universe as well, which is my second point. See, Ben was constantly trying to figure out how the watch worked, but never really could, and we the audience were right there with him trying to figure out how it worked. This also ties into a point I made in my recent Agregor video about showing rather than telling. See, Primus just outright tells us how the watch works, but the original series shows us some aspects of how the watch works, but never tells us everything, always leaving us the audience curious as to how it really works. This curiosity is the reason why the revelation of a master control function in the season 2 finale was even remotely interesting, because we had no indication up till that point that something like this was even possible. The Omnitrix was like the Force from Star Wars, or the Island from Lost. Its mystique made it extremely interesting, and kept you coming back week to week to uncover more about how the Omnitrix really works. But Primus ruins all this by explaining what the Omnitrix really is. Primus's explanation of what the Omnitrix really is really doesn't live up to the mystery it created in the classic series. See, Primus basically is just a server, and the Omnitrix is basically just a computer receiving information from a server, which is just such a lame explanation. Like I said, the Omnitrix was the most advanced piece of technology ever created in this universe, yet somehow the writers thought it was a good idea to compare that super advanced piece of technology to an everyday ordinary computer here on Earth. Now that the mystery is gone, we're just left with the explanation, leading to less engaging stories, and the potential for more engaging stories, because now that we understand exactly how it works, it's a lot harder to make episodes like, say, Dr. Animo and the Mutant Ray, because we know that technically shouldn't be possible with the explanation we're given. And even when the writers can come up with a unique situation and a unique explanation, it still never manages to be as interesting as when you don't know exactly what's going on, and are trying to piece it all together yourself alongside the main characters. But I think I've ranted enough about this minor continuity change, so let's now go to the second minor continuity change that I have a problem with, Verdona.
Kiddo, we belong on Anodyne among our kind.
So for those of you that don't know, in the classic series, Verdona was implied to be dead, but in Alien Force Season 2, we learned that that's never actually been the case. Verdona was actually alive the whole time, and is part of an alien race called Anodites that can control mana, and we learned that Gwen is part of this alien race, which is why she was able to do magic in the classic series. Before we even get into Verdona though, let me just say that I really don't like the idea of Gwen being an Anodite being the reason why she was able to learn magic in the first place. See, originally, magic was something Gwen had to learn completely on her own, as Grandpa Max and Ben really couldn't help her learn anything. And while this never became a focus of any major episodes, that's also part of the reason why I like this journey so much. It was something that was more so going on in the background that never took up too much screen time away from, say, the Omnitrix's mystique or an important plot that was going on in an episode, but it still managed to feel like it was a journey. Despite this lack of focus on it, it never ended up feeling like Gwen just learned magic as an afterthought. She was always testing out spells both on screen and off screen, and was trying to figure out just how exactly her powers worked. This reveal that these powers were inherent to her the whole time kind of takes away from that. Gwen basically had this latent power that basically made learning magic easy for her, whereas in the classic series it seemed like she was really struggling to figure out how exactly her powers work, and was only really able to figure it out because she was extremely intelligent for an 11-year-old. Plus, the way the writers use the Anodite state as like a power-up Super Saiyan state is also in my opinion a lot less interesting than Gwen having to figure out a really powerful spell on the spot and use it without fully understanding what it might do. And also, while I usually don't like to nitpick here, I just have to ask, how come Gwen's powers only got unlocked with Charmcaster's spellbook? How come they didn't get unlocked when Gwen wore the lost charm of Bizel, something that is said to amplify the user's natural power tenfold? How come Charmcaster doesn't notice a significant difference when taking over Gwen's body in the classic series? In Alien Force Season 3, she comments on how Gwen's powers are just naturally stronger than hers when she steals them, but doesn't seem to realize this in the classic series where she's literally possessing Gwen's body and using those powers. And speaking of possessing Gwen and using her powers, how come Ghost Freak wasn't able to do this when he possessed her? And also, again, why is it specifically the spellbook that unlocks Gwen's hidden Anodite powers and not, the numerous life-threatening situations she was in the classic series? These would have been great times for her powers to naturally kick in and save her, but they never do. But I digress. While these nitpicks do bother me, I know everyone else likes to pretend they don't exist, and that it makes perfect sense that Gwen's powers were just naturally unlocked somehow by holding Charmcaster's spellbook. So let's talk about what really bothers me: Verdona. Like I already mentioned, in the classic series, it was heavily implied Verdona was dead, and we saw Grandpa Max wrestle with his grief over his lost wife. It was a quiet thing that he never said out loud to the kids, obviously both in-universe, but also to us, the children watching the show, due to Cartoon Network restrictions. But in one episode in Season 3, we see him looking at an elderly couple longingly, at the place where he and Verdona first met at, St. Louis. That's already pretty dark and kind of sad, but there's an even darker implication that, while yes, I know was brought up in non-canon episodes, is still very interesting to me. That implication is that Verdona never actually knew Grandpa Max was a part of the Plumbers organization, a group dedicated to handling all the weird sci-fi stuff that happens in the Ben 10 universe. She died thinking her husband was just an average ordinary plumber that went to unclog toilets, never knowing just how much Grandpa Max gave to the universe and how he risked his life nearly every day on the job to try and stop alien threats. Not only is that a beautifully tragic backstory hidden in the background for more attentive viewers, but it also makes Grandpa Max's obsession with keeping the Omnitrix secret make more sense. It's an instinct. He's just naturally reacting to this stuff the way he always does, by trying to hide it from everyone else. This makes his obsession with keeping Ben's Omnitrix a secret make a lot more sense, as truth be told, Ben having a secret identity never really made sense in the classic series, because all of his villains already knew who he really was. And yet the people that you think should know, i.e. some of the plumbers we meet throughout the series, never find out until Ben uses the watch in front of them. Only Cooper's father was told about this in advance, which seems strange until you realize, again, that Grandpa Max never even told his own wife what he was really doing. So why would he just trust random people with Ben's secret? It's a perfect natural reaction in my opinion, that helps explain why Grandpa Max was so secretive throughout the classic series, and why he didn't just immediately tell the kids that he was a plumber in the first episode when Ben got the Omnitrix. He's been keeping the secret from so many people for so long that it honestly wouldn't have made much sense if he just suddenly became comfortable telling his grandkids what he was really doing all his life, especially cause it's implied he didn't even tell his own kids in the classic series. But of course, Alien Force Season 3 decided to ruin all of this. By having Verdona be alive the whole time, this intriguing and rather dark piece of Grandpa Max's backstory ends up being completely decanonized, and causes a serious question to arise. That question being, why didn't Grandpa Max tell Ben and Gwen that their grandmother was alive? Seriously, this is super important information for them to know. They're both under the impression that their grandmother is still dead, even though Grandpa Max and their parents parents both know that this isn't true. This is a seriously messed up thing for Grandpa Max to have done. This is their grandmother. They deserve to know the truth, and yet he just decides never to tell them any of this. And in Gwen's case, this basically prevented her from ever figuring out the origin of her powers. So to sum up, by changing it so that Verdona was alive the whole time and actually knew Grandpa Max's secret, the writers basically took away one of the most intriguing and dark aspects of Grandpa Max's origin story. The idea that his wife never truly knew what Grandpa Max was giving up to the universe, and never really truly knew her own husband. And the fact that Grandpa Max decided never to tell his own grandkids the truth and decided to let them think their grandmother was dead forever, which is just horrible, but not nearly as horrible as the next change we're gonna talk about. Let's move on to number 1 now, shall we?
I didn't create a weapon. All of you did. I created the ultimate device for understanding all the beings of the universe.
So this next change is technically 2 changes, but since they both changed the real reason why Azimuth created the Omnitrix and why he let Ben keep it, I'm going to be counting them as 1 change for the sake of simplicity. And speaking of simplicity, rather than having me tell you guys the true origin of the Omnitrix in the classic series and the true reason why Azimuth let Ben keep it, I'm just gonna let Azimuth tell you guys that information himself. Take it away, Azimuth.
I created the Omnitrix to help all the beings of the universe grow closer together. If an Earthling can make that happen, then I see no reason why he shouldn't have it. Besides, that thing is nothing but trouble. Always has been. You keep it. Good riddance.
And there you have it, folks. This right here was the original series' intended explanation for what the Omnitrix was. It is a device that literally allows its wearer to walk a mile in another species' shoes, in order to help foster understanding between separate species within the Ben 10 universe, and help those species grow closer together. It's a wonderfully complex philosophical idea that only the smartest being in the universe could think to make real. Unfortunately, Alien Force decides to change this explanation by adding on unnecessary details that I personally think change the nature of the Omnitrix's origin, along with changing a lot of Azimuth's original character. What are those changes and details, I hear you asking? Well, here, let's allow Azimuth to yet again explain what I'm trying to tell you guys.
The Omnitrix is the last hope of alien species destroyed by the Hybrid. And with the Omnitrix, you have the power to return to life any species that the Hybrid exterminates, including the human race. The Omnitrix is Noah's Ark, and you are Noah.
This change basically completely invalidates the original reason provided in Secrets of the Omnitrix as to why Azimuth let Ben keep the watch. For those of you that don't remember, Azimuth originally let Ben keep the watch because Azimuth saw that Ben was using the Omnitrix for its intended purpose of bringing together various different alien species when he had brought together Tetrax and Myax in order to help stop the self-destruct sequence, and the fact that Ben had also brought peace to the galaxy by getting rid of Vilgax. But now with the idea that the Omnitrix was created and had the intended purpose of restoring to life dead species, this basically makes Azimuth look like an idiot. Why would you leave something that powerful in the hands of a 10-year-old, no matter how impressive that 10-year-old might be, and no matter how annoying it was that people kept trying to steal it from you? However, this isn't the only change the writers made to the origin of the Omnitrix. See, the writers also introduced a character named Zenith in Ben 10 Ultimate Alien, who turns out to be Azimuth's girlfriend. She leaves Azimuth after he makes a terrible weapon called the Sword of Azkalan that has the power to destroy entire planets. Once she leaves him, Azimuth creates the Omnitrix as a kind of atonement for his sins, hoping that one day Zenith would remember him and that this new device would be used for good. I have a lot to say about this change as well, but for now, in the interest of time, all I'll say is that 1, this change takes the Omnitrix from being an interesting, thought-provoking idea that the smartest being in the universe decided to pursue to basically just an average guy trying desperately to win back the affection of his lost wife. It makes Azimuth human. Yes, I know that is the point the writers were making here, and what they were trying to do, make Azimuth more relatable, but Azimuth is the smartest being within this universe. He isn't relatable to us, the audience. Azimuth as a character is interesting, just like how Commander Spock is interesting, how Light Yagami is interesting from Death Note, and how Professor Paradox is interesting in Ben 10 Alien. Alien Force. Their knowledge and wisdom and intelligence makes them interesting as a character, along with some of their philosophical beliefs. By trying to make him more relatable and human, the writers have taken away what makes this character so interesting. And by changing the nature and purpose of the Omnitrix, it takes away from that scene that I talked about from Ben 10 Secrets of the Omnitrix. See, there Ben was living up to the philosophy of the Omnitrix by using it to bring species together and create peace. And even though he did use it as a weapon, much like the evildoer Vilgax wanted to, he still used it as a weapon and used the powers of various different alien species to bring peace to all alien species by getting rid of villains like Vilgax, Slicks Vigma, Kevin, and the list goes on in the classic series. Now though, with these new add-ons to the original lore of the Omnitrix, Ben was never really living up to what it was meant to be. He didn't bring back to life long dead species the way the Omnitrix was meant to be used in emergencies. Quite the opposite. By using it as a weapon, he unintentionally endangered several thousand species when he turned on the self-destruct function. And by using the watch as a weapon, much like how the Sword of Ascalon was meant to be used, he unintentionally betrayed the purpose of the watch to be used as a peacekeeping tool to prove to Azimuth's lost lover Zenith that he had changed and started working on devices that could only be used to create peace in the galaxy. Once again, ruining a brilliantly subtle yet deeply complex story from the classic series with a completely unnecessary change. Which brings me to the main reason why I decided to make this video. All three of these changes that I just mentioned in this video have always personally bothered me, because none of them really needed to happen. Think about it. Primus could have just been replaced with an episode where the Omnitrix gets hacked or freaks out for whatever reason because of Vilgax. The Verdona episode can be taken out entirely, and we could continue under the assumption that Gwen is just a magic user, and the Omnitrix's origins could have just stayed at what we had learned in the Secrets of the Omnitrix movie. But instead, the writers chose to change these things without fully thinking through the implications of those changes within the story, which is really unfortunate because all three of these things in the classic series were things I greatly liked. The mystique of the Omnitrix, the journey of Gwen learning how to use magic, and the reveal of what the Omnitrix's intended purpose was in Secrets of the Omnitrix were all some of my favorite things within the classic series, and I was really disappointed that they were changed in Alien Force. But yeah guys, I'm gonna wrap up the video here. Sorry it ended up being so long. I tried to cut out as much unnecessary stuff as I could, but there was just so much to get through in this video. For those of you that are new here, consider subscribing, as I usually post polls asking viewers what they want to see next from me, so you're definitely going to want to check that out if you're interested in this video. Hopefully I see you guys again soon, but if not, don't worry. I have a lot of projects coming up that I think you guys are all going to be really interested in. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll be sure to see you guys again real soon.